I was actually in Liberia about six weeks ago, and was invited to work with both the families and also schools, particularly on a number of issues. And the Liberian actually, they speak the so-called pidgin English, which is absolutely, I cannot understand what they say. So already, right there, I have a language barrier. So I have to use an interpreter. But what I found is that particularly working in communities that really I don't understand the culture, I don't understand what people kind of are suffering and how do they look at mental illness or even just distress in general. I usually, in many ways, kind of use the circle approach just to get to know that person, just to get to know that parents and family and the community. So that's my starting point. And then the other three things I usually look at is that how do they explain in terms of what's happening to them? How do they explain, what are they encountering, what they feel is hope or hopeless and so forth, in related to, we can call it mental illness, we can call it psychological distress, we can call it emotional distress, we can even call it, my kid is not going to school, and so forth, just to understand from their perspective what does that mean. The other way is I always pay attention to the way they communicate to me, the way they talk to me. Now, it's much harder using an interpreter, but if we have to, we have to. But if I'm able to know the language, let's say I speak Chinese, then I'm able to engage the family, the child, in the language that is appropriate to that family. And then the fourth point I usually also look at is, what are their help-seeking behavior? What works for them? What doesn't work for them? What do they believe in that works for them? Because that's how they explain, the problems or the challenges the family experience. So those are the quick four areas I tend to look at. So now I think we go back to understanding from a family perspective. And I have Malika up here to share with us for the next 40 minutes. It will be also group discussion, and she's old. She is the one that say me and style, so I'm going to let her do it. Exactly. And please, as you can beginning to see today, it's group participation. Everyone comes in with ideas, comments, and questions, and so forth. So, can you introduce yourself?
I am going to introduce this. The first thing on my list, intro. So I'm Malika Artie. I'm from Children's Services of Roxbury. Everybody can hear me, right? Okay.
It's a herd of elephants in the Serengeti.
Oh, sure. Put me up here.
What is your She has style, and I did not do that. The reason is I like the family. Elephant is very family oriented. From the younger, juveniles, that's what I guess that's what they call elephants. To to the hierarchy, the maternal, the paternal. That's the reason I choose this picture.
No, so make sure you get my good side.
I'm in
From Children's Services of Roxbury, the CSA. I wanted to just first explain how I came to that. I am a parent of 3. I was a teen mom. I have a 13-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, and a 19-year-old son. So I started out as a family partner because I have a wonderful 19-year-old son who is working me hard. And then I moved from being in the field about 3 years, the entire, since we rolled it out. And it has changed so much over that time, but being in the field and then moving to being a senior very recently, which has been quite a transition for me to leave the families, and I'm actually being put under the gun to get out of every single family by the end of this week, which I think is unfair. But I'm like, I'm not done. But I have to either transition it or make it happen. So saying all that, I wanted to briefly explain the plan. Initially, I was approached to review some questions that were going to be put to a family, and the hope was that I could facilitate some discussion with the family using some of my personal experiences and kind of picking their brains. And that didn't, we know how that works sometimes, and the family wasn't able to make it. So then it was like, get up there in 45 minutes and make it happen. So I was like, how's that gonna work? So I did kind of look at the questions and reformat some of them from a parent-family perspective. And then also, I decided I would be the family. So I'm going to kind of review the questions with you. I'm going to answer any questions. I'm going to share a little bit about my story. I know that there's another family here. You guys are, no, okay. Well, anybody else who might want to share their experiences, or it's certainly a group discussion, but I'm going to use myself as the family. I'm going to kind of answer the questions that I was going to pose and share my experience and see how we go from there. And so, first I'm going to share what my experience has been with CSR, the CSA, how I think we are currently trying to be culturally and linguistically. You don't even think good. I'm glad I'm not the only one who doesn't know. But how we're trying to frame the language to approach our families in the best way that we can. So one of the things that I think that we definitely are currently doing is hiring our community. I feel like we can definitely go into households and feel like we are the community that we're serving. I think that that's the first step in really meeting families where they're at, you know. A lot of times I'm like, oh, wait, I might live one street over from this family, like I might see them all the time. But I think that it does help to know kind of what's around you, what's available to them, what their concerns may be. Really understand it because you're right there. Our office is dead set in the center of a lot of the community that we serve. So that's the first piece about it. The other thing I think is that the language that we use, we call them families. We don't call them caseloads. We don't say, you know, oh, I have this many cases. It's like you're getting a new family today. I think it helps us to really see them from the top as a family, and that kind of lends to a certain respect you have walking into the household. You're not thinking about them as a number, or, you know, you're really thinking about them as a family. What are they going through? What's happening? I've been doing this work for a really long time. I used to do FSS. I come from sort of an FSS, FST background. Before that, I was what was called, I can't remember what it was called. It was a parent teacher. It was through the Cambridge Public Schools. And I used to go out into the community and teach parents how to play with their kids. And that's what I did from being very young, very young, kind of. It was more really getting on the floor with them and teaching them to make Play-Doh and do all sorts of things to really to teach them to get on the floor. A lot of those families had some language barriers which were causing the kids to have some disconnect in terms of being able to go right into Head Start. Some of them didn't know what was available to them, and somebody actually pulled me out of that into FST. Like, you already do this, and so I came from that to FST, which I did like 5 or 6 years. All over Greater Boston, all up to Framingham, Chelsea, like everywhere. I was everywhere, and I was working my behind off, and I absolutely loved it. And then from that, coming with Children's Services of Roxbury and CC, who I'd worked with before, to interfamily partnering, which was really hard for me. It was a really hard shift to kind of wrap my mind around how do I not tell the family what it is that they need, because I know I went in and I've already seen a family just like this, and so I already know what they can do. And I think that it took me a year or so to really step back. I don't know, I always think back, like, what could I have done with that family that I approached in the very beginning differently from the approach that I understand now. And now I value it. I think that's another thing I value. See? I value something else. But I do value really being able to ask a lot of questions and let them tell me, rather than going into a household acting like I know. Because my experience with that is that I became the expert on their family. So every single thing that happened, they called me. So what should I do now? And it's like, okay, this is what you should do now. And then if I didn't have the answer, I was like, oh no, I've let them down, I don't have the answer. So now this doesn't put me in that corner. I feel like I feel like it's my job to come up with the answer. It's our job to explore what the answers could be. And I think that is a lot of pressure off of the people, the staff we're sending into these households to really work with the family directly and find out what it is that they need to do, what are the steps we're going to take. So I think that we are in practice of that at CSR. I also think that something that's really important in terms of understanding the culture of a household, and that could be the actual culture of the household, like where are they coming from, but also, is it a household that doesn't get up early? Are we going to put the pressure, like, you have to see me at 9 o'clock in the morning? that's a culture of a household. I have lots of households where moms are just like, I just got them off, I'm sleeping for another 2 hours, I'll see you when I see you. Being able to meet that and not put this pressure, because I think that's where you get the engagement issues, that's where you get struggles, because you're showing up at a time that's not good for the household. And they're feeling like, I'm just going to avoid her because I can't stand that she didn't respect that I'm not up yet. So I think that some of those things, if we look at those beliefs, if we look at things, I had a family once who the mother really believed that her daughter hearing voices was somebody speaking to her from beyond, and that was a gift. And I wanted to be like, I don't know, I think maybe she's really tired of that gift. But she really was like, no, I think it's beautiful, and I light a candle in her room so that the white light can surround her, so when she's hearing the voices, she's fine. So it took a year to really say, like, but it's causing her to run out the door and be unsafe, because they're telling her to do things that aren't really safe for her, so how can maybe we need to give her a little break from that. But really not judging her, which was hard. Maybe when I got home sometimes I was like, oh my goodness. But really seeing that was her mom's belief, like that was their household belief. They believed it was a gift, and I was there to support her being safer, and how can we support her with this struggle. So that's just an example. I think language is really important. I'm just going to kind of slide into, this will kind of go with two sections. So one, when they gave me the initial printout of what we were thinking about, some of the questions were, how did they describe their young adults who are mentally ill? So as a parent of a youth with an SED, that immediately brought all my stuff up, and I was like, what do they mean? Like, mentally ill. First of all, I think that word can be a real spark word in our community, especially with young people that are in the transitional age. I think when you're talking about, a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, parents are more willing to listen to you as an expert. I think a teen is like, I'm not mentally ill. Like they're not willing to attach that name to what they're doing. So I think the first thing that I remember I crossed out a mentally ill right away and wrote SED, just because I think it's a way to kind of approach this unknown thing that they would rather a tag on it that sounded like